and get started. All right, so the hearing of the Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals is now called to order at 6:30 p.m. on March 16th, 2022. I ask the recording secretary to please call the roll for attendance and the members of the board.
Mr. Shelko?
Here.
Ms. Metzel?
Here.
Mr. Ferraro?
Here.
Mr. Iafreda?
Present.
Also present from the building department is zoning inspector Chris Hall, building official Bob Rodick, and law director Mark McGinn. All persons in the audience are required to sign in on the register sheet. If you have not done so already, please do so now. If you wish to speak at this hearing, you will be required to be sworn in as in any court hearing. Signed in. All right. Does anybody on the board have any comments on the minutes from the last meeting?
I make a motion that we accept minutes as written.
I'll second. Oh, did you have a?
Yeah,
I thought it was included.
So should we say accept the minutes as corrected? Yeah.
Yeah.
You just change it to say that?
I make a motion we accept the minutes as corrected.
Just one small word. What
All
I
right,
said.
second.
Okay.
All right. Oh, we have to call the roll. Sure. Yep.
Mr. Shelko?
I wasn't here, so I guess I abstained.
Ms. Metzel?
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes.
Okay. All persons wishing to speak on this issue will please raise your right hand and affirm this oath. So anybody that will be speaking, you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before this board is to the best of your knowledge, an accurate and truthful presentation of the facts. If so, say I do.
You do.
All right. Now, in turn, please state your name in relationship to the cases for the recorder.
Start this one.
Jeff Snell, any attorney.
Terry Repack, President, 1850 Harmon.
Don Gash, property parents.
Don Bash,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mark was his right there.
Dustin Bash, Don Bash.
All right. Thank you. This hearing will be conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Ohio Sunshine Law. The notice of the hearing was duly published in a newspaper of general circulation in the city of Macedonia. The notice is available for review upon request at the building department. The rules of the board require an affirmative vote of 3 members in order to pass, regardless of the number of members present at the hearing. The hearing is conducted in an informal manner to review the evidence and to respond to questions. However, there is an outline of steps that will be taken in order. An appellant does not have to be present for the board to hear the case as publicized. Okay, so each case number and appeal request will be announced as its turn arrives. So we have one piece of old business to attend to first, and then we will get to the new business. So for the old business, we are looking at case 660 that in the last meeting was did not receive the 3 votes required to pass, and so the applicant has submitted a letter stating that they're asking the board for reconsideration. So at this time, should I ask for a motion at this time? Or?
Yeah, so just to clarify, the board is in receipt of a letter from Attorney Snell asking that the board reconsider its vote not to approve a variance in case 660. The board's under no legal duty to make a motion to reconsider case 660, but in the event that the board is interested in doing that, an individual member that voted in the majority in case 660 at the last meeting would be the one that would have to make the motion. Here, I believe that's only Mr. Iafreda, as the other members voted not in the prevailing side.
I make a motion, we do not accept the appeal.
So you would either make a motion to reconsider or not make the motion.
I make a motion, we will not reconsider.
So
So
The motion is either to
if I can add, so you swore in the applicant's attorney. If you want to let them speak, that's up to the board. Before making any motions, it's up to you.
Is that up to the board or the single,
I'm sorry,
is that up to the board or the single individual that's able to make the motion?
it's up to the board.
Should we take a formal vote? Is that,
That is up to the board.
all right. Can we do a formal vote? The roll?
Want me to do the roll call?
So,
Well, we have to make a motion.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I make a motion that we,
Allow the
oh, that's just, yeah. Okay, I make a motion that to allow the appellant to speak and present in this case. Will the recording secretary please take a vote?
You want to say for case 616?
For case 6, very clear. Yep.
Mr. Shelko,
Yes.
Ms. Metzel,
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro,
No.
Mr. Iafreda.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming. All right,
Well, that was a tie vote.
so we don't have the majority of the board members here, or we have a majority of just 3. So 2 noes and 2 yeses.
It does not pass on. You need 3 affirmatives.
Okay. All right. So the first case number in the new cases is case number 668, and the appeal form is in order. Is there any correspondence from the notified adjacent property owner?
There is, we received one email from one of the public. I'll go ahead and read it. Okay, it says the 2020 or 2021 meeting to discuss variances on the Fairlane property was attended in part by BZA members who were unfamiliar with the property in question. The board is in a position to make decisions which affect our residential and business property and in the case of the Bash family and their livelihood. It is reasonable to expect the board members to personally visit the property in question prior to making these decisions. The Bash lot is conveniently surrounded by asphalt on 3 sides, so mud boots are not required. It will be apparent to any board member who visits the property that thorough drainage will be a priority. Currently, there is a large pond on the Bash lot, perennial feature each winter, spring, and early summer. The entire block drains down to the spot. The Bash architect has plans to put in a shrub and tree covered mound parallel to my property line and that of my backyard neighbor on Fairlane, and a detention pond in the northeast corner of the Bash lot. To prevent water from backing up into my backyard and that of my neighbor, some form of drainage will be required to mitigate the natural damming effect of the urban mound. Note that this only applies to the easternmost portion of the mound where the elevation is low, the easternmost 20 feet of my backyard and extending eastward from there. There exist a couple stands of mature trees on the property which we, my neighbors, my wife, and I, would very much like to see preserved if possible. There are 3 trees on the northwest corner of the lot along Harmon Drive, 1 tall conifer and 2 other trees. There is also a stand of trees just south of our house which, given the site plans, do not appear to interfere with any planned parking areas. It would be our preference to have a break in the urban mound so that these trees may remain standing. Thank you for your consideration.
All right. Is there any unsolicited correspondence regarding this case?
No.
Okay. So at this time, we will allow any residents that wish to speak on this issue, please come forward. Yeah, any of these will pick you up.
Okay.
Right.
Good evening. My name is Terry Repack. I live at 8250 Harmon Drive. My property is immediately to the north of the west end of the property, the Route 8 portion of the property. My wife purchased the house in 1999, and when she passed away last year, I inherited the house, so I'm now the property owner. A little more than 1 year ago, I came before this body over the telephone to state my objections to the variances requested that are substantially the same as those requested today. At that time, you granted the applicant his wishes. However, things are different now. Different because I'm here to remind you that you, the BZA, are required to follow the law as codified. You are not to follow directions, whether stated or implied, by any member of the city administration or their spokesperson or anyone else. Your mandate is clear and codified. The application to the BZA is clear and is codified also. Please listen carefully. The applicant has failed to comply with the requirement for a written narrative to justify his requests, except for case number 672. It is incumbent upon the BZA to require the proponent to justify his request for these variances in writing prior to any decision. Ordinance 1135-13B5A. For your information, 672 is regarding the setback along Route 8 because the property is not 150 feet wide as required. Allow me to summarize the powers and duties of the BZA as directed in section 1135-03B and further detailed in Macedonia Ordinance 1135-13, variances, area and use, which authorizes the BZA to grant variances that will not be contrary to the public interest according to the following procedures. The emphasis there is mine, according to the following procedures. Paragraph 1135-13B1 itemizes those procedures with 11 factors which the BZA shall consider and weigh in deciding to grant a variance. The word shall is important here. Ordinance 1133-01C definitions states the word shall means mandatory. That means that the 11 tests enumerated in 1135-13D1 are to be considered by the BZA in making a decision. There is no case where the proponent's desires, wishes, dreams, or other ideas are to be considered. As a matter of fact, they are specifically denied by Ordinance 1135-13D1G. In addition, 1135-13D1C requires the BZA to only grant the minimum variance needed, not the variance requested. I know there's a lot of numbers there, but I assure you I've checked through the code thoroughly, and those are correct. Continuing on, Bash can be an ideal neighbor, probably the best neighbor that a residentially zoned area might expect. But they need only follow the rules that are there to protect the city as well as the adjacent residential areas to the north. They're neighbors. They also need to know that they have the potential to ruin the immediate residential area if they continue on the path of changing the rules to meet agendas. I still support their project as I did a year ago, but only if they work to not take advantage of the BZA and its charter. Case number 668, I support the BZA approval of this variance. Case number 669, the application for a variance to be considered, as well as the ordinances regarding criteria on which those variances are based, have not been addressed by the proponent. This narrative is required by 1135-13B and 1135-13B5A. They have only stated what they have done in their attempt to make their request appear to be favorable to the BZA. The BZA is required by ordinance 113503B and 113513D1 to consider only the criteria spelled out in ordinance 113513D1A through K. There is no situation where the BZA is required to consider desires of the petitioner. As a matter of fact, 113513D1G specifically prohibits it. The proponent has indicated that his setback request is from Harmon Drive, while the ordinance states the setback is to be measured from 1, the lot line adjacent to a residentially zoned district and his site, 116706F, and 2, any public right-of-way, 116706E. The excessive size of that variance is, this variance that is being requested can be significantly reduced, 113513D, 1C, and H, by sliding the building approximately 35 feet to the east. This would reduce the variance requested to approximately 20 feet and would maximize the setback to around 70 feet. This small change would also eliminate the necessity for the variance requested as case number 671. I request that the BZA deny the request as written and grant a 20-foot variance to the residentially zoned district to the north. In addition, to further maintain the quality of the residential area adjacent to the Bash site, I request that the existing line of mature trees be protected during construction and maintained with new landscaping screening added to supplement the existing vegetation. The raised berm is problematic for many reasons. Case number 670, placing the trash enclosure even closer to the residential district than the main building is a concern. If anything, it should be located the farthest away, and the general arrangements of drives, parking, and the trash enclosure should be revised so the need for this variance is eliminated. A simple rearrangement of the parking area can accomplish this. Case number 671. The minor changes suggested previously in case 669 would eliminate the need for this variance. 113513D1C. I request that the BZA deny this request. Case number 672. The applicant's statement regarding his request for this variance is the only time he has complied with the requirements of his application. He has stated his case for this variance based on criteria allowed by the ordinance. I support the BZA approval of this issue. And I might show you, if you are not already familiar with it, the application form which the applicant is required to fill out, which lists all of the requirements they must address in writing for any variance to be accepted. As I said, the last variance, 672, is the only one that was properly addressed. Thank you.
Are you the house on the bend?
I am the house on, my property is at the point of Harmon Drive and South Farm Drive.
The bend.
At the bend, yes.
So you're requesting those trees that are there, right.
That are
as you make
all along the
yes.
Bash North property line
Yes.
be maintained.
Yes.
I have photographs of them that I took about a month ago when I guess it was the 1st of January when I wrote the city a letter, and Mr. Gade was kind enough to respond through Mr. Rodick. And I also have photographs that were taken in the summer from my property that shows that line of trees. And through that line of trees, you cannot see anything past it. You can't see the building on the other side of the Bash siren. It's a very heavy line of screen.
Okay, so you're here now. Is Bob the Gatus?
Bob Gatos is directly across the street from me
that guy.
and
Okay.
immediately north of the Bash property. He
Okay.
is on the east side of Harmon. I'm on the west side of
And
Harmon.
then there's another kind of patch of trees over there.
Yes,
And
yes.
those are the trees
It
he's
continues,
requesting?
right. It
to
continues
remain?
past his property,
Yeah.
almost to
okay.
Fairlane.
Right, okay. So just want to get it clear in my head.
It's
I was
almost a
just-
full
Yeah.
mature, and they're mature trees. I mean,
Right.
we're talking very large
Well, they
trees.
appear to be pretty far away from, the building, where the building would be.
Yeah, there's a few that come out into, south into
Closer
that
to-
property,
yeah.
but most of them are generally around the property line, such that I can't tell which are on the property and which are on the Bash property and which are not on the Bash
Right.
property. They kind of
Okay,
wander in and out. Only a surveyor.
Just to clarify, this is.
That's my home.
And this is the gatehouse?
That's the gatehouse.
Okay.
And this line of trees actually starts over here. There's a few dead ones in here. It starts over here and it ends here. It does not continue. We're not here to show it.
okay, now, and I have one more question. You were saying you agree with case 672. Well, last time we met, we had approved a 120-foot setback that they asked for. Now they're asking for 109. Are you in agreement with the 109?
I'm not,
The applicant is seeking a variance of 41 feet to reduce the minimum required lot width when measured at the setback line to 109 feet. We had
The
approved it
setback-
at 120.
the setback is 90 feet from that property line. And they have requested previously, a year ago, a 42-foot setback, which would mean,
Okay, we're talking about two different, I think,
Case 672.
we're talking about a different,
672 is in regard to the,
the minimum,
The
each
width.
lot shall be a minimum of 150 feet in width.
right. That has nothing to do with setbacks per se, between that property and the residential property. What that means is that
And measured at the
this
setback
distance,
line.
it needs to be 150 feet,
Right,
but it's not.
no,
It's only 120 feet, and therefore they're asking for a 30-foot variance so that they can maintain a 60-foot setback. It's a technicality, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. It's just the geometry of the site, and that's why I have no objection to it.
okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will the zoning inspector now please state the city's position?
Case number 668, the Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals will hear a request for a variance at Fairlane Drive. The variance request is to section 1167.06A, purpose of a business office district. The applicant is requesting a use variance allowing a commercial retail business within a business office district.
Does the board have any questions of the city on case number 660?
Yes. So was that the same as case 627? that we approved last time, and basically the same as just doing it again? Correct. I'm asking the city.
If you see the minutes that I wrote, the zoning
I'm
letter,
just asking.
you can
for the record.
see that that was approved previously.
Okay.
We don't have to rediscuss the ones that are already approved
Yes.
previously.
We do.
We don't, we do have to
We do.
You do,
rediscuss them?
they've expired, right?
But can we just, do we vote, or can we just go with our vote?
It's a fresh case, it's treated as a new case.
Okay.
I was just trying to find out if we had voted in favor of it last time, is my question. It might be the same information, but
On the minutes that
Yes.
it states that that was approved on July 15, 2020, reference case 627, and that was approved.
okay, that's not
Yes.
verifying getting it on record then.
Ken, there should be a copy of the minutes in there too.
Yeah, I have, I just wanted to bring it up and make a note of it.
Okay, so 627 equates to case 668 today. Correct? So when we make a motion, we have to say,
No.
668.
668, yeah.
yeah.
All right. Any other questions on this case for the city? Okay. The board will now hear a presentation from the appellant. please state your presentation on this case, and I think, you know, if this is allowed, that we can have them speak on multiple issues, and we want to come, you know, go through each one separately.
I think you want to go through each one separately.
Yeah.
We have to do.
But
Yeah, we have to
can-
vote separately.
We can vote on this before we ask the appellant to speak on it. We don't need their input at this point in time.
You'll want to get
Yeah, we do.
the applicant's input if that's what you've traditionally done, which I believe is the case.
Treat it like you
Yes.
said as a new case.
Yes.
So the only point was that we had,
Yep.
come on forward.
Yes,
Have a
because
seat.
some of the variances have changed. Not all of them.
And the ones that haven't changed, we haven't explained.
Right, but
And there's technically a new one, even though the three of you are. Good evening, Mark Wazinski, architect, been working with Bashes for a couple of years. Before the board, we proceeded in July of
15,
2020.
July 15.
July 15th, thank you. As you know, a few things in the world have happened and caused some delays and issues. We're back to start this project again. You know, when we were in the last meeting, Bashes had not closed on the property. They were before the board, before closing. It was actually closing the next day. This variance, and several others that we are back to the board for, were approved at that meeting, and that's why Bashes went forward with closing on the land. Again, there were some circumstances that took place that caused this to be pushed aside, and it was unfortunate. But I think we'll attack the issues one at a time. So I want to go down the past until we have to.
thank you. Appreciate that, Mark.
Okay. Any questions from the board on case?
No, so we still need to have an explanation.
Oh,
Kind of why we need to have this variance.
oh,
Well, we start with case 668 and then read it, and then we'll all be on the same page.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah, so case 668,
because you're asking for 5 variances, correct?
Yep. case 668 is the Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals will hear a request for a variance, Fairlane Drive. Variance request is to section 1167-06A, purpose of a BO business office district. The applicant is requesting a variance to have a commercial retail business within a BO business office district. So we can go by the letters here. The property cannot be put to any economic viable use under any of the permitted uses. It's our understanding that this property has been tried to be developed for the past, has been rejected because of the uses and the relationship with the neighbors. This is the only BO piece of property along that corridor. It's isolated and it's not contiguous to any other field district, so it's kind of an anomaly. We feel this proposal to place a building here and use that is not of high frequency, not noise generated. It's a low impact for the surrounding area. The variance requested steps from conditions which is unique to the property. And ordinarily not found in the same zone of district, which again, this being BO, it's not just that we have a BO isolated, doesn't really work with any other development in the area to maintain that use. The
hardship conditions not created by the actions of the applicant. I'll go back to one of my prior statements. This variance was already granted, and the purchase of the land took place after that grant. And that was the entire reason they closed on the property. Granting this variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residences, particular use of jewelry store function, will have minimal impact in comparison with allowed uses in the BO district. Variance will conform to the existing B1 district with bus of property to the south and east. Granting the variance will not adversely affect public safety, health, safety, or general welfare. This is considered a BO or a B1 building, has the same impact. This probably would have less than a BO because we have a smaller number of occupants that would be in the building. Variance would be consistent with the general spirit and intent of the planning and zoning code. Again, the isolation of this BO district tends to not fit with the existing zoning along the road and the zones to the south and east. And minimum, affording minimum relief to the applicant. Again, the land was purchased after this was granted. And this is the granting versus happened.
Okay, I make a motion to allow the commercial retail use within the BO business office district.
I second the motion.
For case 668.
Yes, the case 668.
Mr. Shelko,
Yes.
Ms. Metzel,
Yes,
Mr. Ferraro,
Yes.
Mr. Iafreda.
Yes.
say the request is ready.
All right, the request for case 668 has been approved. The next case is case 669. And the appeal form is in order. Is there any correspondence on from any adjacent property owners or unsolicited correspondence regarding this case? All right. Will the zoning inspector now please state the city's position?
Case 669, the Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals will hear a request for a variance at Fairlane Drive. The variance request is to section 1167.06F. Every building or structure intended for office use shall have a rear and side yard width of 90 feet from the lot line adjacent to an R district. The applicant is requesting a building setback of 47 feet, which is a variance of 43 feet.
Can you, the architect, show me on here where that is?
First, does the board have any questions of the city?
So this is different than one we granted. I know we gotta do it all over again, but yeah, these are all slightly different. So it's basically a whole new thing. That's all I have.
Okay, yeah, I would like to.
To start, this building is not moved on the site. It's the same as it was the last time we were in front of the board.
But it shrunk, right?
But it shrunk.
Shrunk down.
Yeah, we actually moved it farther from the property. So I don't know why this one was not incorporated into the last meeting, or if something somehow wasn't, I didn't present correctly or what, but the whole reason we reduced the building, because it came out farther this direction, we reduced it back to where it was the agreement or the accommodation we made in order to have that position. That was.
Well, we approved it at 40 feet. We did have this one before. Did we not?
I believe that's correct.
Yes. So you're asking for 3 more feet? the variance?
Well.
Well, 43 feet,
It's totally from scratch, I get it, but what I'm saying is we went over this and over this, and
yeah.
so.
That's, okay, so we did have this, you did have this variance.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so you're just asking that it needs for some reason to have 3 more feet?
We have more information than we did last time. We have better surveys.
Mhm.
Before we were working with some county information. So this has now been staked and verified, and all these, obviously, dimensions are down to decimals, that they're spot on to where the building will be built. So if there was some error before with the county supplied maps, those have been rectified, and these dimensions are accurate. So
Okay.
that's some of the, I think the other, not to move ahead, the width of the property compared to what the county map was, compared to what the deed says it is and what this drawing reflects, were slightly different.
Imagine.
Yeah. So
We've ever looked.
they bought the land off of the deed and not off the county map, so they don't feel bad. It's actually the size of the deed.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment about the setback that we're talking about right now?
Okay with that?
So I think how the board's normally operated, the public's made comments and not interjected during the applicant's presentation. I would say let the applicant present, and then if the board wants to allow the public to comment again afterwards, that's up to the board.
So I know there's been mentioned the stand of trees that was on the north side there.
We just go right to this doesn't indicate those trees.
The only part it does is, I think, we are in agreement to save as many of those trees as we can. To keep that shield and help buffer that reduced distance. So the mounting, if not preferable, we can add trees. We did get the topo, and that lot is about as flat as a cornfield in Iowa. I mean, there's no movement on that land, so understanding some of the drainage issues with the neighbors, I think we can obviously accommodate that. We would have to work through engineering to make that portion of the project work, but a long-winded explanation to yes, we are. We'd like to keep the trees as much to help buffer before them there.
So can you, just my questions, can you go specifically for this 43-foot, show us where it's on this drawing?
You just,
And then you might need to show us.
It's right there.
right,
This line.
that's right.
Yep.
So it's not impacting the trees?
No, this is the line of the trees coming around this way.
Mhm.
There's some here. Yep, right here. Yep, yep.
Okay. Right there,
Oh, I'm looking at this, here, right on this,
that's over
Yes.
here, okay.
and normally that would be what?
That would be 90 feet, I believe.
So,
Yeah,
This, again, with the shape of the property, is that Harmon Drive comes in and pushes that lot line to the south, really pitches that down.
mhm.
Now, just to clarify, the code is for a line adjacent to an R district. So is this anybody's property other than the road that is the boundary between our district and the BO district?
I guess that road would be city property.
I didn't hear.
Is there any property between the Bash property and the road that separates the BO district from the R district? There's no
Only
slice-
right away, only
there's no
right
slice of
away,
Residential, yeah.
only right away.
Yeah, sorry.
no, well, that's, we gotta do it. So my only other question is, going back to I know we are technically not dealing with 2020, but I thought this was one thing we had met, and they adjusted the building at that time slightly. Did the building change several times, or I don't know if you remember that discussion?
Well,
Because we
If you allow me a few minutes, we have been in front of planning, sort of with the cart before the horse, because we didn't know anything. They made some suggestions on how they would approve it through planning. One was flipping the drive. They wanted to drive through a line, to drive from the east side to that shopping center. So that pushed everything down as far as we could to the south to maintain that alignment. So that sort of pushed the building, twisted it a little bit to make it fit within that area. So the building has gotten smaller. I think we were at 7,000 square feet, 7,500, and now we're down to 60, 68, like that. Which I don't know if those statistics were.
Well, it says we were at 7,000 square feet on July.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So it has reduced in size.
So in other words, in order to agree with the planning commission about having the driveway straight instead of offset, does that necessitated this extra 3-foot variance
Yeah.
from what we had approved before, because you had to switch the building a
To
little
get
bit?
to get the proper width for the parking and, yeah, just sort of
Okay,
snowball.
okay. I think I understand.
Any other questions on this one? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a motion to ask if we allow any other resident comments before we get to the next case. So I make a motion to do that. Do we have a second?
Second that motion?
Okay.
Mr. Sharples?
yes.
Ms. Metzel?
Yes,
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Eisner?
Yes.
okay, Gary?
Thank you. Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt this, but I wanted to state that the way the building is dimensioned and located on the site plan as it is now is not correct as far as the relationship, the true relationship of the building to the residential district. The true dimension to the residential district is roughly 20 feet at the scale that I have at 8.5 by 11 drawing. And I can point it out to where right now the building is dimensioned 43 feet to this, which is the line of the R district to the business district. But if you follow that line around to here, it actually goes into here, and it shows that way on the zoning map. And the dimension from the residential district, which is at that point there, to the corner of the building is roughly half of what is shown on here. So the drawing, the dimension is a false dimension. He can't choose where he wants to dimension it to, because he could say, well, from here to here, it's 100 feet, and I don't need a variance. So if he has a 47-foot or 43-foot dimension there, and that's what you base your variance on, he's going to have to move that building so that he comes 43 feet from that point there. So the drawing is incorrect. In addition, the true 90-foot setback line and the 60-foot setback line for a future variance is not shown properly because it doesn't take into account this little jog.
You can't take into account because that dimension comes back so far, that radius disappears. So
It
that's,
doesn't come 90 foot. I know for a fact because I weighed it out myself.
on an 8.5 by 11, see as this comes around, this keeps stepping out. So here's where the dimension line is, but this comes all the way down here. You can't have this radius anymore, it disappears. It's just this geometry.
I have a question for the city on this one. So do we know where the R district ends? Because, so like we know where it ends here, but we know where it ends, this little nub of a road.
I think just their property is business office. Everything beyond that is residential.
See, I thought we had a discussion that the center of the street is kind of divided into two different zones because that's where everything's based off. I remember discussing that because you can't have the side of the street one side of the street, it's in a different zone, and then it ends when you come from the street. I thought we dealt with the center of the street, was my recollection.
Theoretically,
Mark, Matt, you want,
Well, you can.
you take a look at that, there's the business office, I mean, there's Harmon, there's South Farm, I mean, it comes right up to where the road is, and even to the road on Fair Lane.
Right. So on the far west side, it incorporates this nub. Yeah. Because that goes all the way to Route 8.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's that
is
right
not-
there.
His statement is not correct. That is BO.
The map's also, it's, for the record, they're looking at the city zoning map, which is on the wall in the other room.
the resolution on the dotted lines is not great, but it's clear to see where it goes.
It's just a funky lot. So, I mean, they could be closer right in that area right there.
Does the board have any other questions on case 669? Okay. All right. So the chair will entertain a motion from the board on this case. Case 669 to approve for a,
Well, the motion would be either way. I make a motion that we accept case number 669 as requested.
I second that motion.
Mr. Shalko?
Yes.
Ms. Metzel?
Yes,
Mr. Ferraro?
yes?
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes.
The motion has passed. The appeal is approved. Moving on to case number 670. To the secretary, is there any correspondence in addition to what we've already heard, or any unsolicited or from adjacent property owners? Okay. Will the zoning inspector now please state the city's position?
Case number 670, the Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals will hear a request for a variance at Fair Lane Drive. The variance request is to section 1167.06F. Every building or structure intended for office use shall have a side or a rear and side yard width of 90 feet from the lot adjacent to an R district. The applicant is requesting a dumpster setback of 34 feet, which is a variance of 56 feet.
is this here your dumpster?
That's actually the neighbor's dumpster. Our dumpster is up here.
I wondered how there would be any question about that. Okay, yours is over here by the,
Yeah, right, the gates are
By
right
the
there, so
woods.
it's, yeah.
Sorry, before we get to that, does the board have any questions for the city?
no, this is,
This is a new one.
this is.
This is,
yes.
Okay, all right, because I see.
So we did talk about you relocating the dumpster the first time around, though. You went from the south side to the north side of the parking lot.
Yes,
Okay,
so this is it in living color.
this is the only place you want to put this?
Well, this stems back to the planning of moving that drive and lining it down to create that access. We don't have room anywhere on the property, and we prefer not to put it in front of the building. You know, I think the use does not have, we're talking mainly paper and cardboard, no jewelry.
Oh darn, I was gonna rate it at night.
You know, we don't have food or grease dumpsters. We can work hours that they are not in early mornings or late evenings, on Saturdays or Sundays, and then what is your typical trash pickup? We guys don't have.
Yeah, one of the,
Listen.
yeah, the Bob Gatos came in and talked with us, the property owner, there. And he had voiced a concern about that as well. And just asked about
The noise.
the noise and
Noise.
everything. And as he came, we said basically our dumpster might be emptied once every 2 weeks. That's our judgment off of our trash usage. And it didn't seem as though he had any, and obviously he wrote his letter, he didn't have any grief with that.
But still, even though it's once every 2 weeks, what have you done? You know, what structure is around there? Are you putting other bushes, trees? What are you doing
Again,
to mitigate that?
we will be leaving the trees, the thick vegetation that's already there.
Okay.
We'll maintain. If we can burn around that on top, and we're also talking, this is a fairly low structure, 6 feet. It's not as tall as the building, 16 feet. If we can put a mound, keep the drainage, we can put a mound C-shaped around there, and put coffers on top, or on the light or something.
The dumpster doesn't make any noise. Truck takes it
Yeah.
out. It makes all the noise, and that's what's outside.
Let me ask you a question. The 90 feet is from
From here
here,
to there.
here, and this is our dumpster.
Yes,
So if we move this dumpster this way, these are parking spots, am I correct in saying that?
correct.
So if we move this way and eliminated one parking space, which is what,
10.
10 feet? So we reduce the variance that you're asking for.
Okay.
Where is that? Can you show this down right here?
We would be removing a parking space here and then sliding this 10 feet to the south. You know, eliminating these two, which pushes this curve down to there, pushes that down to
So
there.
how much of a variance then would that become, do you think, instead of 56 feet? That would
26 feet?
shorten it up quite a bit.
Yeah, 46 feet, I guess, when it's 10 feet.
Which is 50, almost 50%.
Yeah.
You understand where
Oh, yeah.
I'm coming from?
Yeah.
This, I'm trying to help you.
No, I agree, yeah, that's,
And,
As much as I just the input, everybody's concerned about a time of day pickup. You gotta be able to let trucks swing a big swing, so there can't be any cars in the parking lot when you pick that dumpster up. So now I'm talking about early morning pickup, probably 8 o'clock, like the winking lizards around 8, I think, when they come and dump that. So if we're in that other slot, we could be in a later, we could request a later pickup that someone's not getting woken up. And because we can't have cars there. That's why the planning commission asked initially to move that.
Yeah.
They were the ones that discussed it, to line it up and where and how to move it to the side for the swing of the trunk.
you anticipate those parking spots to be well used?
Well, the front ones are gonna be, because we're gonna let the customers park there and the staff's gonna park farther away, so it's picking it up when that happens, so. And we're usually there at 9 o'clock in the morning, and
Well, you got bankers hours.
So-
Like the banks open so people get the money.
yeah.
Why would you wait? So not a good idea?
I guess
Move it?
we can see if it becomes part of one of
Well, we're planning, if we move something that affects what they decided, then what happens?
Well, we just changed the variance, like.
Will they override this?
Well, they would be, it'd be the parameter that you set with this setback is the parameter that they would have to, that the applicant would have to manage for the planning commission to go ahead and review that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So if it was part of the motion, I mean, I don't think we're there yet.
Right.
Then we wouldn't change the 10.
Would they have to go?
Where he's going. No, I get where you're going with it. You're meeting it halfway rather than.
Right.
That's what I think that you're trying to obtain.
That, exactly right.
Would they have to go back to the planning commission again?
We have to.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, because they have not seen these updated plans since they go back.
Yep, got it. Any other questions? No. Okay, so do we want to make does anybody want to make a motion?
We want to see if there's comments first, because we did it for the last one.
Oh. Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion to allow any resident comments on case number 670 after the appellant's presentation?
I'll make a motion that we allow comments.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Mr. Stelco?
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Eilers?
Yes.
Thank you. My only comment is that the dumpster enclosure that services the plaza that Jewelers is in right now, the Weekly Blizzard, has had their trash picked up. As long as I can remember, I've been living there for 12 years, at generally 5 or 5:30 in the morning. And I have contacted the city, and I know several other residents as well in that area have contacted the city about this obvious nuisance. And so far, nothing has been done about it.
Excuse me, but you're getting a little off track. We're just questioning where they want to put their dumpster.
Let me finish it, and I'll get to my point in just a second. What I would, if you grant them that variance for that thing, for that dumpster enclosure to be that close to the property line, I would also like you to include a caveat or include part of that, that the trash be picked up in accordance with city ordinance, which is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., not 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's all I'm asking.
Okay, let me make a comment to that. And the gentleman said that you pay the trash pickup. Can you not dictate the time that they pick up?
We don't pay for Weekly Blizzard, it's all part of fee, common area maintenance fee that we pay, and the Weekly Blizzard schedules.
Therein lies the problem.
And those, we don't control that.
But that's not going to be the same thing when you have your own dumpster,
We would
right?
not put in an ordinance that they're supposed to follow the right rules. I mean, it's not.
Just to confirm with.
The rules are the ordinances are the ordinances.
Yeah,
They
so-
have to be complied with.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can't.
but thank you.
Yeah, I
I'm not sure
appreciate
if you
it.
were finished. Sorry.
That was my only comment. 5 o'clock in the morning.
They
is not
have
acceptable.
multiple pickups of the cardboard pickup, and there's a regular trash pickup, and then there's even a third for the grease. And so, I don't know who comes that early, but I know we walked out there and they're still full at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Well,
So, and I know they have to move one to get to the other sometimes, so.
Okay.
And just to note, the garbage trucks will be there either way, regardless of where the dumpster is. So, which is, it's
Part
own.
of being busy residents.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right.
Okay, if I make a motion, which I'm going to, do I make the motion with the new variance in the feet, the setback? Instead of 56, we're going to go to 46.
Yeah, you just say that my motion includes this change.
Okay.
I will entertain a motion from the board.
I make a motion, we accept 670 with the 10 feet variance on the setback.
A reduction to.
Reduction to 46 feet to have the dumpster setback 44 feet.
Wait a second.
46 feet, is it?
46-foot variance, 44-foot setback.
I'll second.
Mr. Shelkoff?
Yes.
Ms. Metzel?
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes.
The motion has passed and the appeal is approved. The next case number is case 671. Is there any correspondence outside of what we already have? The zoning inspector, now please state the city's position.
The Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals will hear a request for a variance at Fairlane Drive. The variance request is to section 1167.06E. The setback line for any building or structure erected shall be a minimum of 60 feet from any public right-of-way. The applicant is requesting a building setback from the public right-of-way of 47 feet, a variance of 13 feet.
Does the board have any questions for the city?
So the middle of the street is the public right of way? Is that right? Coming from the,
The public right of way is on that line.
This is the same
This
number.
is the same number as the other variance, because this is the street right here, these dash lines. So this is the right of way is that 60-foot right of way or something?
I think 60 feet, right?
okay.
Any questions for the city from the board?
No.
All right, so the board will hear a presentation on this one, page 671.
This, I think we have a thick vegetation line at that location that really creates the separation from where the right of way ends and the building begins. It's not a hazard that would be created by moving that 13 feet closer. It's a function of how that road wraps around and reduces that property. With the situation on the property.
So theoretically, okay. So just to clarify, the variance that we approved for case 669 was because this was a R1 district?
Yes.
And the variance that we're looking at reviewing right now for case 671 is because it's a public hearing.
Correct.
Any questions from the board?
Can you show me where this is?
Sure.
So I can get it.
No
perfectly
problem.
right.
So here's the road, this dash line. This is the center of the road according to the city surveys. And then this is the right-of-way here, this property line. The property line separates the right-of-way from what they own.
You want to go 13 foot closer?
Yeah.
Because that has to do with where your building is?
Yes.
One question, are there any, I know the front has the tower with the illuminated logo on it.
Yes.
Is there anything similar on this face of the building? So there's no lights on that face of the building?
There'll be a light that's above this door, but it's a small,
Security.
yes, security. There will be no illumination or signage.
And I'll make a motion to grant the variance of 13 feet for case number 671.
A second?
Mr. Shelkoff?
Yes.
Ms. Metzel?
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes.
Okay. The motion is passed and the appeal is approved. Moving on to the last case, number 672. Any correspondence from anyone outside of what we already have? Okay. The zoning inspector, now please state the city's position.
The Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals. We're here to request for a variance at Fairlane Drive. The variance request is to section 1167.06J. Each lot shall have a minimum of 150 feet in width when measured at the setback line. The applicant is requesting a minimum lot width of 109 feet, a variance of 41 feet.
Does the board have any questions for the city on case 672? Yes, this, it's in the city area.
I'm asking
It
you
was,
kind
it
of.
was
Okay.
originally at
Yes.
120.
It was approved, yes, the variance that was approved previously was 30.
Again, that was the faulty map from.
Oh, wow, that's, no government ever makes it that. And this is, yeah.
Okay, show us where the setback line where we're talking about. on the
And this
map.
again is, the setback line is established by the property line, which this property comes down to a point. So when you set back to the line,
Mhm.
there's no way, this is the line, there's no way that, I mean, unless the property expanded this way to get to 150 feet, it's the shape of the land itself. It has nothing to do with the orientation of the building or the,
Is
anything that we did.
is this the part that is up high?
No,
right here?
that part is
Or
over
over here?
here. We moved that as, again, that was a planning thing, we move it back towards this commercial area where they mimic the same thing.
Right, okay.
So just, it's a kind of a pie shape, but the actual property at this end is just 191. Is that
Yes.
correct? So the property is actually 191 if you were able to utilize that down here.
Correct.
Because of the way the parcel's shaped.
Correct.
Mhm. And there is a wooded area right
There is a
along
ditch.
Route 8?
No,
Yeah, I
there's-
think I saw that.
There's a big
The
ditch
big
there.
ditch, yeah, I did see that,
Actually,
yeah.
there's two ditches, one on either side of
Mhm,
the slope.
mhm. Do we have to consider any landscaping in any of these? I just thought of that. We didn't really address that in any motions.
In terms of
In terms of,
anything outside of the planning commission?
yeah,
No, I mean, it's not part of the
No.
variances.
okay, we didn't have anything to do with that
I think we work closely with the planning commission,
on that, because I know they're
Establishing
usually we do.
something acceptable.
Yeah.
And so just because we're on the last case,
Yeah.
so Mr. Rebeck presented and the other gentleman presented, and you've heard all their information and listened to their concerns, especially with the drainage. And when you talk about something about drainage, and we're not dealing with that for these variances, but you've heard those concerns. See what you can do to address those.
We don't, it, as Mr. Ryback mentioned, is the neighbor that was over here?
Yes, he's with Teresa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Gatus.
Mr. Gatus. As he stated, that pond, seasonal pond extends onto our property, and we don't want that either, so we have to do something to.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of curious because we're technically legally aren't dealing with that situation,
Yeah.
but it was brought to our attention
Mhm.
by residents, concerned residents. So it's our responsibility to make sure.
Do you work, excuse me, do you work with the city planning commission on that specific issue?
The city engineer gives a report to the planning commission, and we have to satisfy.
Okay, since we have a letter concerning that, and that's not under our jurisdiction, so they take it back to you, Bob, and Chris, and then they revisit it for, I was going to say, the foliage that they're going to plant to stop some of this drainage. I know I had a similar problem in my yard, and I put certain ground covers in there, which stopped it by 80%. So,
On the front of the plans, there's a water retention area we've already added.
we saw that,
So,
but we probably still have a problem, if we have a problem.
You would have to grade the property and I think Sugar Valley has already provided me with some correspondence. So we would be working through that issue. So I believe you.
There's a review process in place with the city engineer's office. They have certain criteria they need to meet with stormwater pollution protection and stormwater management.
Okay.
And we have that in our code too.
Okay, I'm just trying to touch the base of the letter.
Right, that we're just trying to make sure that the concerns that brought forward to us are at least listened to.
That's exactly right.
Any other comments, questions?
Make it through almost.
So once again, because of the way the building had to be placed, that necessitated this additional,
No, it does not have to do with that. It just has to do with the shape of the property. It narrows, so it's not a rectangle. So we have 190 feet on. Yeah, I'm sorry. Start drawing. We have.
Show it so easier on this picture.
Yeah. See that we have the proper distance here from the setback, but the setback is picked off of that property line, which is only here. It doesn't physically allow for the dimension of 150 feet. It's just too narrow. You know, if this lot were rectangular, or even if this line came over here and we set back, we would have the proper distance.
yeah. But originally, you only asked for 120 feet.
That again was so that information we have early on that's we went through the expense of getting it all surveyed and, you know,
Okay.
done and registered with the counties.
Okay. All right. So Chair will entertain a motion from the board on case number 672.
I'll make a motion that we accept the request as stated, case number 672.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Shelko?
Yes.
Ms. Metcalf?
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes.
Okay, motion is passed and the appeal is approved. I do want to revisit, come back just really quickly to case number 668. So in the original request in 2020, it looks like the variance was granted with a condition that the property be used as a jewelry store. So I wanted to make a request to the board to see if we wanted to take another vote with that condition in the variance, that it remain a jewelry store and they would have to come back to the board if it would become anything else. Under any name, it doesn't have to be non-max jewelry, but as a jewelry store. So I will entertain a motion.
Do you want to see if the applicant has any
I'm
comments?
sorry, if you have any comments.
I think that was acceptable. He's still pretty young, he's got 1 year.
So you want to make a motion to amend the original motion to incorporate that restriction?
All right. I make a motion to amend the original motion to case number 668 to include a condition that the property remain a jewelry store.
Being the only use.
Being the only use for
Retail use. Okay.
retail use in that business office district.
I'll second it.
Mr. Shelko?
So what happens if it doesn't pass? Does that mean that the original motion doesn't pass or this
No.
amendment to it?
The amendment to it doesn't pass.
Okay.
You already passed the original motion.
Okay, no.
Ms. Metcalf?
Wait. Not confused with.
I know, because I didn't say
vote.
yes. I said no to changing the original amendment, the original motion.
So a vote
I
A vote in the negative is not to place the restriction
Correct. I
limiting
do
use
not
to
believe in the
jewelry
restriction.
retail use only.
I do, so I'll vote yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes.
Okay, the motion for the amendment has passed, and that is it. So, any other business before we make a motion to adjourn? Okay?
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming back. That was one of, I think was one of my first meetings as chair. On the phone, and it was like, oh my God.
Let me ask
Can we
you
motion
a
to
question.
adjourn first?
Did you not make a concession to the movement of the building in the original? When you were here the first time, we voted no on the first
Yes,
one.
and we took off,
The size.
that's when we,
the
that's
size.
when
Cut a
we
slice out.
Sliced it, is that right?
And you made it smaller.
You can remember when you're old.
Yes.
Well, that was
Well,
planning
that was
like
as a
that.
plan,
Yeah, we was-
something
We
that
didn't.
we discussed from the last.
Oh, sorry. We need to
That's,
get
yeah, that's okay. All
I'll make
right.
a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All right.
I'll second that motion.
Do we need to take a vote on
All
that?
in
No, we can
favor?
all say
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Okay,
Nay.
motion. Meeting is adjourned.
yeah, right, guys.